Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here, out in the shop with a brand new video for you today. And in today's shop, we're going to be talking about a color that is called a shock color that sometimes can make the difference between catching none and catching a lot of fish. So in today's shop, it's all about shock colors, when, where, and why they work. All right, let's start out by talking about shock colors. And before we even do that, if you're a fan of this channel, by the way, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan, you know how much that I'm into something called match to hatch. I'm very much into a theory called match to hatch. And what that means is you pick lures that perfectly imitate the color of the forage, right? Your whites, your pearls, like a shad wrap with a muted white, green pumpkins, natural watermelon colors, right? Colors that black with a little blue, colors that mimic the forage, colors that are more muted. I'm a big believer in that. But there is a time that shock colors outproduce natural, subtle colors, and it's like night and day. It's unbelievable. So let's get away from those neutral, natural shades, and let's talk shock colors. All right, what is a shock color? A shock color to me is a lure, whether it's a hard bait, a soft bait, a spinner bait. I'll show you some of them. It's a lure that is so bright and obnoxious that it almost shocks you, right? If you're an old guy like me, think back to the 80s when neon was in, when everybody was wearing neon stuff. That's a shock color. It's the same exact thing in lures. So we're talking about colors that are super bright, vibrant, and they stand out. You can see them for miles. I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite shock colors in some different lure types. Let's start with topwater. Oranges, bright orange. This is a Mullick's Lover SS buzzbait. Super bright orange buzzing blade. It's almost shocking, right? It's fluorescent orange. A walking bait, Rapala Skidder V in a super bright hot pink color, right? Great examples of shock colors. Moving down in the water column a little bit, we'll talk about maybe like in the middle of the water column, you've got bright flukes, pink, chartreuse, stark white, floating worms in shock colors. This one's orange or methylate or pink or lime green, right? Totally bright colors for some lures in the middle. And then I'll give you some on the bottom. Same thing, guys. Spinner baits, jigs, especially spinner baits. Look at this. Mullick's short arm spinner bait. Super bright willow chartreuse on it that I can slow roll near the bottom. I can burn it. Even soft plastics that are super bright colors that you fish on the bottom. This is a Berkeley Power Bait water bug in a color called Pinky. Look at that thing. Bright pink color. And if you look at all these lures, they have one thing in common. Besides those baits being bright and obnoxious and blaring, they don't look like anything that swims in the water. It's totally debunking my theory of matching the hatch, of being natural and subtle and dialing it in to the color of that natural, subtle forage, right? It totally gets away from that. But there are 3 scenarios where shock colors not only work, but they're better than subtle colors. Better than subtle colors. And we're going to give you those scenarios right now. Let's start with the most obvious one, which is dirty water and low light conditions. Dirty water and low light conditions. especially dirty, ugly, nasty water. If you're watching this video and you fish a lot, odds are you've gotten to your favorite lake, reservoir, pond, or stream, and you've encountered water that looked like chocolate milk. Muddy, dirty water from a rainstorm, from a downpour, from, current upstream. Just dirty water conditions. The other one's low light. Early in the morning, late at night. Also, when a heavy storm's coming in and the skies get real dark, these bright colors can really help the fish hone in on the bait. That bright spinner bait with a chartreuse blade, a spinner bait with an orange blade, a spinner bait with a bright, stark white blade. Great example of a lure that not only provides vibration, right? Dirty water, low light, fish need vibration to find it, but they're able to find it easier than a natural color because of that bright blade or that bright skirt, right? Same thing with a top water. Dirty, muddy conditions. A black buzzbait kind of disappears. It still has the sound, but you'll get misses and they have a hard time finding it. A buzzbait with a bright orange blade, a bright orange skirt, they hear it and they see it, and you get a more positive hookup, okay? So scenario number one for shock colors, dirty, ugly, nasty water, and low light conditions. Great time to switch from natural to shock colors. All right, guys, scenario number two, and listen on this one. This is a really, really important one. Shock colors work when there's too much of one thing in the water. And when I say that, what I mean is when there's too much bait and all the bait is the same. Fishing with a lure that looks like that, it's going to get lost, right? Great scenario for this getting lost, right? It's all the same. Too much bait is in the fall. If you've ever fished in the fall and you go into the back of a pocket or the back of a creek and you see shad for miles, they're shad flicking for miles. And all the shad is 3 to 4 inches long. It's all a pale white, a little silver gray in it. It all looks the same. Thousands, millions of pieces of bait fish covering the water. And the bass, they can't pick this out, the natural one, from all the rest, right? So scenario number two for a shock color is when there's too much of one thing in the water. When there's too much forage and it's all the same. Fish a shock color to make the bait stand out. Real good scenario for me on this one, I'm going to show you two, is in that fall when there's a billion shad or a billion yellow perch or whatever, a billion of one thing. I love to go to a fluke or a jerkbait in these super bright colors. Just think about that fluke, right? This is a Berkeley power fluke, power bait fluke. Dude, that's chartreuse or a bright pink or a bright yellow. All of a sudden, with a million 3 to 4 inch pale white with gray back shad, this thing stands out and captures the attention of those fish feeding in that area where it's all the same, right? Same thing with a hard jerkbait. You know, a million alewife, and all the alewife are silver with a little bit of a greenish blue back. They all look the same. But all of a sudden, a pink back X-Wrap comes through there. Stands out. It's different. It breaks the norm and attracts the fish, okay? Scenario number two for shock colors, when there's too much of one thing, especially in the fall, try to do something different. Break away from matching the hatch when there's too much of one thing. All right, scenario number three, and if you're watching this right now and you live or fish where there's smallmouths or spotted bass, pay attention, okay? Largemouth guys, pay attention too, but if you fish for smallmouths and spotted bass, really pay attention. And when bass get in groups, some people call them wolf packs, some people call them schools, some people call them groups or clusters. When bass get together in groups, especially in stained, semi-clear to ultra-clear water, these shock colors can make the difference on getting a reaction strike and not getting a bite at all. I've seen it happen in water where I could see a penny in 20 feet. I could look down and see a penny laying on the bottom. I mean, the clearest water you've ever seen, where I throw a natural looking stick bait, green pumpkin, watermelon, a caramel apple, just these natural colors. And we're so trained to think clear water, natural colors. But when they get in groups, a lot of times they get aggressive and they need a trigger. Well, this thing's subtle. This thing's natural and it blends in with the environment and it doesn't stand out. It doesn't trigger a reaction. But in that clear water, when you have a wolf pack, a pod, a group of 2, 3, 8, 10 bass together, and you twitch a floating worm by them that's bright pink or orange or yellow, looks nothing like anything in that clear water. Those fish see it. It creates a reaction, a curious reaction. And when one goes to look, the other has to get involved, the next one, and it creates almost an attack scenario with that wolf pack. I've seen it time and time again with largemouth, with spotted bass, and especially with smallmouth, that a bright color works better than a natural color. Even on baits, finesse baits on the bottom, a Ned head. When you're throwing a Ned head to a school of smallmouths and it's black or green pumpkin and it blends in, it almost disappears. It doesn't trigger that group, that school, into that curiosity. But when a pink bait with a bright chartreuse Ned head, I love a bright chartreuse Ned head, comes flying down, the first smallmouth sees it, the next one sees it, the next one goes toward it, the next one says, no, I'm getting it, I'm getting it. And it creates a feeding frenzy. It makes them react because of the shock color. So another great scenario for shock colors, stained to ultra clear water when fish are in groups, use the shock color to make them react. Man, I hope you liked this shock video that we're talking about today in the shop. When to break away from the natural colors, when to break away from the match to hatch. 3 great scenarios. I hope you like that one. Man, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, real quick before you log off, click on my subscribe button, subscribe to my channel. We're going to send you a notification. We have a new video every single week. If you're already subscribed to the channel, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help you become a better fisherman. Get you a bright lure, try a shock color. In certain scenarios, you're going to catch more fish. Bye. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these 2, and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.